If you haven't been living under a rock in the last year and a half, you know about 2023, the year of Sanderson, and you know that Brandon Sanderson produced secret projects. He had a massive Kickstarter that sold millions of dollars worth of these books. Over the course of 2023, he released secret project books that he had written behind the scenes while he was working on the ones that everybody knew about, and they included Tress of the Emerald Sea, the Medieval Handbook of Frugal Wizards and Frugality, Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and The Sunlit Man. And apparently there was even a fifth secret project. I'm not entirely sure if that was just conjecture or hearsay. I live under a rock, so I'm not sure. But in any case, there were secret projects everywhere. People were so excited that Brandon Sanderson had secretly written these books, and nobody had any idea that they were coming out, and that was super cool. But as I watched this happening, I wanted to talk about the most secret project Sanderson book that exists on the planet. And I guarantee that many of you watching this video will have never heard of it. Now, I have been reading Sanderson for years now. I have read a ton of his books. I think I've read over a dozen books by Brandon Sanderson at this point. And this is the book that still is on my top 3 Sanderson books of all time list. And it blows my mind how few people have A, read it, and B, even heard of its existence. Apparently, if you are a Brandon Sanderson book that exists outside of the Cosmere, you're just kind of out of luck. But without further ado, I am here to talk to you about a book that is so secret that most Brandon Sanderson fans haven't even heard of it, and that is Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds. By, yes, look, there it is, Brandon Sanderson. This includes 3 novellas. The first one is Legion, the second one is Skin Deep, and the third one is Lies of the Beholder. These novellas are written in the very typical, straightforward, light Sanderson style, but at the same time have a lot of deep themes to them. It is a very light psychological thriller, at the center of which we find Stephen Leeds, a young man who is battling a mental illness that also has a really helpful twist. Now, I'm the first person to tell you that I am not about the mental illness as superheroes trope. That's not a thing that I get into. I really am annoyed by it most of the time. And I feel like Sanderson did a really great job kind of coming right up to that line and never crossing it into a point that I felt was patronizing or ridiculous. Now, there are definitely some real-world mental illnesses that very much fit the symptoms of what Stephen deals with. However, Brandon Sanderson never overtly names it in the book, which I actually kind of liked, because I think that opens the door for a lot of different people to resonate with his character. Stephen's mental illness gives him hallucinations, and these hallucinations take the form of characters. They are real, breathing people to Stephen, and each of them has a very specific skill set that helps him on his quest to solve different crimes. I think what Sanderson hits so well in this book is the depth and chaos with which people live and breathe every day with mental illnesses. I think that Stephen is a really interesting, flawed character. I think that so much of the undercurrent and context of this story with all of the different hallucination characters really can resonate with a lot of different traumas, a lot of different people that deal with different types of mental illnesses. So for example, I'm someone who suffers with dissociative identity disorder, and while I do not have external hallucinations like Stephen Leeds, there were a lot of things in this book that I just really resonated with and were incredibly impactful for me as a reader. It actually made me very emotional at times reading this book, because it was the first time that I'd read a book with a protagonist that I really felt like I could understand in a mental illness context. Now, while Sanderson uses this story to explore some pretty deep mental illness themes, Stephen Leeds and the characters that he hallucinates share a dual purpose. Sanderson writes this in his 3-part essay about Legion. The more I write, the more this became a metaphor for the complex relationship between a writer and the characters in their head. The voices that they know aren't real, but still depend on convincing readers to buy as real people. The stories deal with mental illness, yes, but the further I wrote, the more Stephen became a stand-in for the way that our perceptions, and our hopes, shape the world we perceive. And maybe, for the crisis that can be caused when we realize there's a misalignment between the two. The cast of characters within Stephen Leeds gives us a sharp motley crew contrast, each one bringing their own unique flavor to the story about a man whose brain operates on a very different scale from the average human. Despite the short length of these novellas, Sanderson offers us a plethora of themes and moments to digest. The other thing that I have to mention about Stephen Leeds is that there was actually even a secret project within this storyline, and that is an audiobook called Stephen Leeds' Death and Faxes that came out in 2022, and the audiobook is the only way to read this story. This is one that I haven't even read yet. I'm really excited to get to it this year. This is kind of like an Easter egg nugget within the Stephen Leeds universe, and I have no idea where Brandon Sanderson is going to take the story past the 3 books that were in the original omnibus, but I guess we'll find out. This is such a bingeable book, and there were so many moments in here that I had to stop and ponder and really kind of let myself percolate on. There were some things in here that were hard to read, and there were some things in here where I feel like Brandon Sanderson was just spending some time delving into the incredible maze and labyrinth that is the human brain and how it works and how it responds to things like trauma and stress and all of those things. So there's a lot here. There's a lot packed into this tiny little book, you guys. You can see my copy, and this was from a few years ago when I read it, is tabbed like crazy because there were so many great lines. There were so many moments where I stopped and really had to have a good think about it. This is a good book. If you are a Brandon Sanderson fan, there is no reason why this book should not be on your TBR, even though it is not in the Cosmere. As far as I'm aware, it has 0 ties to the Cosmere at all. I really think that this is an unsung hero of Brandon Sanderson's canon of work. It is still in my top 3 books of his of all time, and I think that this is one of Sanderson's most profound explorations of mental health, which is something that he really is passionate about, clearly, in a lot of his books. And I think this is one of the better examples, I would say, of the books that I've read of his. And I am not speaking for, obviously, anybody else who has mental illnesses in terms of how they might resonate with this or not. I will say there are some things in Lies of the Beholder, the last book, that were incredibly difficult for me to read, but that was more for personal reasons than not. And I think that it is really smart the way that Brandon Sanderson really allowed Stephen's mental illness to be his own individual thing. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this story, is that it really encourages the idea that each person's mental illness is uniquely their own. Even if it has a label, if you have a diagnosis, it's still unique to you as a person. And I think that's something that this story, for me at least, really represented. Maybe that's just me, I don't know. But anyways, I want to know, if you have read this book, please let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed it, what you thought of it, or if you haven't, if you're going to add it to your TBR. Now, if you aren't a Brandon Sanderson fan, welcome to the video. I'm glad that you're watching. But I actually think that this is a great book for people who aren't really sure if they want to jump into the Cosmere, if that seems a little overwhelming to you, and you just want to get a chance to read a little bit of Brandon Sanderson's writing style without reading the Stormlight Archive or Mistborn or any of that. This is definitely a good option. This one has no connections to the Cosmere. It's a really light, easy read in terms of the straightforward prose, and it's very bingeable, but it also has some really deep themes present throughout the stories. I can't tell you how many people I know who have been Brandon Sanderson fans for like multiple years who still either don't know this book exists or haven't read it. And I think that that's a travesty, and I would love to see more people pick this book up. Yeah, anyways, that's my spiel. I hope you add it to your TBR if you haven't already, or if you haven't already read it. And again, let me know down in the comments what you think of it if you have. So anyways, I hope you guys are having a fantastic week. I hope that you are reading 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.